Hello everyone. For those who've just joined, this is an introduction to Node. My name is Mix. Hello, welcome. What have we got going? How are we going to run this? I'm going to be watching the Twitch chat, so please feel free to ask questions in there. I'll post a link, copy of the link again. I don't know if you can see the previous chat if you've just arrived. This is a link to a collaborative document, which we're looking at over here. And this is what are the things we're going to be covering. I've thrown a few notes up about that so you can know a little bit what to expect. This is ultimately going to populate. I'll put this on GitHub. What's it called? I think it's GitHub Mix Node intro, surprisingly. I'll just put all of these links and notes that we collect in a repo up there. So other sections here are, we've got an introduction section. Invite you to write a little bit about yourself. I'm interested in knowing where you're from, just because it's interesting to know who's attending, and I'd love to hear a little bit about your code background. My cat has just killed a mouse and is maybe trying to bring it to the house. I'm just going to lock the door. Hold on. No. Oh God. Okay. So requests, some of these were collected ahead of time on Secure Scuttlebutt. If you would like to add things to this list, please do. We might not be able to get through some of them, and I might just touch some of them kind of lightly, but do want to respond to what your interests and needs are. And I know that I'm going to be hitting some of these links. If anyone would like to make these nicely formatted at some stage, that would be nice. But feel free to skip it. And feel free to add to this. If you've got any sweet links that you would like to share, please chuck them on the end. Maybe add a little bit of a description if it's something that we haven't talked about in the call, in the stream. So I'm just going to brush up on the last couple of people who have arrived, and then we'll start in. Interesting. Okay. So here we go. So what is Node? I should follow my notes because that'll help me deliver this with some structure. What is Node? It's not too complicated. At some point somebody asked the question, what would it be like if we took JavaScript, which was originally just a little script that you could write for web pages? What if that could be run anywhere? I mean, it's kind of a programming language. If you could run it like a script anywhere, that could be nice. So let's do that. So basic script. So I'm using Vim as a text editor. I don't really care what tools you use to write code. Use Atom, I think Microsoft made some code one, maybe I would recommend that, but it could be fantastic. Use Emacs, I don't really mind. Console.log dog. So this is a terminal with the in the same folder, and the way that you run that script is you say node, could you please run that script? Boom. And there it is. You can do calculations as well. So Node isn't just that though. What else is Node? Node has some basic input-output. I can't get to that until I've introduced another concept. Okay, what else has Node got? Node has what's called a REPL. So I never remember what that acronym means. I don't think you need to remember what it is. But if you just type Node and then hit enter, you'll notice that that I'm in like a different mode. I'm not in the general terminal now. I'm in a little JavaScript type console. It's kind of like if you've inspected a web page, you can run little scripts here. So I can go 2 + 2 is 4, console.log dog var a name equals mix, console.log the dog belonged to. And these are trivial examples. I find it particularly useful when I've forgotten an array method or an object method. So I'll just call it A. Because it's got some tab completion, I think. Yeah, so I hit A and then I hit tab, and it gives me a bunch of reminder things. So I wanted to say I wanted to map them. Actually, slice is the one that I forget the most. You can go and read documentation, or you can just push buttons and see what happens. I don't know. What did slice just do? Well, it seems like I put a 4 in. This is a terrible way to program. Let's maybe look at the documentation. No, actually it's not terrible. It's playing is a great way to learn. So whenever I want to learn, look something up, Mozilla has probably the best documentation I know of on the web. So my typical search starts with MDN array slice, and it fairly reliably takes you to exactly what it is that you need to learn about. And any second, yep, here's an example of like array slice, and it might be that and here's some details about, oh, okay, you can provide it with 2 arguments. They're both optional. The second, you can give the first one, but the second one's optional. What do they do? And it might be that I realize that it's not that, and you can see this same list of methods down the side. So have a poke around. This is a fantastic resource. Okay, so Node is that. Node comes also with a couple of other rad things. Let's look at require. So so here's the files. This is just a file preview on the left here. I can add a file. What's it going to be called? Say I want a function that I want to keep my functions separate. So initially maybe let's write some code and then imagine it's got really complicated. So I've got some numbers. And then I want to double them. And so doubling them, I'm going to use map. And what's the function going to look like? The map function gets passed each one of those numbers, and I want to return 2 times n. So this is this new fat arrow thing is exactly the same as writing the more verbose function. It's got a couple of differences I don't want to get into right now. It's exactly the same as that. As long as the thing is on a single line, there's an implicit return, as in you don't need to write the return. You could write it in here if you wanted, but you don't need to. Look how short it is, yay. I'll leave that in there as a note. And then say I did this. Let's run that. Node. Double the numbers. So imagine I found myself using this doubling function quite a lot. I'm going to extract it. This is kind of a contrived example, but I could put it here. No, let's just use it. So this is declaring a variable which has inside it a function which takes n and turns it into 2 times n. You could write this function here as well, there. I could equally do that. Let's just double check that works. So you'll notice I'm doing this pattern where I tweak a thing and run it and see what it does. I think that's kind of like the most minimal sort of testing loop that you could run. This isn't like any automated testing by any means, but I'm checking my assumptions and checking that my refactoring is working as I go. So now actually this is cluttering this file. I don't like its vibe. Imagine this file's got to be like a couple of hundred lines long, and this doubling function, wow, it's really complicated. It's taking up heaps of lines. I want to get rid of it. I want to pull it out, and so I put it in another file. I put it in my file here because then I can call it from other places, and other people can benefit from the power that is doubling. So how do we get it back in here? So if we run this function right now, it'll say double isn't defined. It's because double isn't here. So we can say double require, and you can require in another file. Basics, whoops, double. I'm prefixing things with ones because I think I want to make the repo so that people can sort of read through it slowly. And so round 2 might be a little bit more complicated. So require is one of the affordances, one of the things that Node offers. It's a specification that's pretty powerful. This isn't quite everything we need though. So when require goes looking for something, looking at a file, it asks, well, what do you want from this file? So you have to manually say what it is that you want anyone who's trying to require the file in to be given. So this is the other side of the require. You say, please offer this up to anyone who's requiring it. So let's try running it now. Boom, working. So that's most of Node. Everything else builds on top of that. Any questions so far? Let's check in. Yeah, sorry, Craig. I probably should ease up on bashing proprietary. No, Moid, this isn't a module quite yet. I'll show you when it becomes a module. Yes. Read, evaluate, print loop. Nice. That's what REPL stands for. Rinchin, the reason that normal JS documentation doesn't include a mention of Node's REPL, I think, is that Node is just an engine, a thing which can run JavaScript, and it takes the basic JavaScript set of functions and it adds a couple of other things. So one of the things that we've already seen it's added is require. That doesn't work in standard JavaScript, and there are workarounds for that, but there are a couple of other things that I'm going to talk about as well. Craig's adding some detail on the implicit return. Yeah, you can use let and const instead of var. I don't want to get into that so much. It doesn't matter. You can kind of just use var. Let and const are new definitions, and they have like different affordances. My style of learning is, of teaching is more, I'm just going to give you the bare basics that you can actually write some code. And then once you've got that, let's come around, let's loop back around and say, well, could you improve this by doing that? Because if I pause and, let and const is a great question, for example, but if I pause and discuss that, we'll just lose some people and they'll be like, oh, okay, I've lost the detail of this. Yep, ES6, this is like a new standard for JavaScript. I recommend just try running them, and if they crash, I think all of them apart from import, in short, Craig. But there are ways to get around that. Maybe we'll get to that a little bit later on. So we've got require. Things I didn't mention in the first pass was that this is a relative path. So this will go looking for a file in the same folder. Dot means same folder, slash means that. If I'd put this in a different folder, like I'm going to make a utils folder, and I'm going to move double in there and just call it double. Then this would be dot slash utils. So just pay attention whether there's a dot in front of that. It's going to make quite a lot of difference. Okay, so that is basic requiring. There's another sort of requiring, which is module requiring. So we're going to write something to the file system. Are we? Yep, let's start with that. So there's a module called FS, and you'll notice that the difference between double and FS is that this has no dot in front of it. That means that you wouldn't expect to find it in any of these folders here. FS is unusual. There's a so the things that Node comes with, I hope somebody's keeping notes of this. Things Node comes with, we've seen it's a JS runner, as in you can go node index.js in the terminal. Got a REPL built in, and knows how to require relative files. I'll leave that there. And it has some basic I/O modules. So FS is considered an I/O module because it's about input and output from the script, input and output to the hard drive. And there are other modules for input and output over networks, but I'll leave those alone for the moment. So we've got some results. I'm bored of console logging. I want to write. This is where I might forget things. Let's go read the documentation. So this is a good Node FS. So MDN is not going to be a good resource for FS because it is not part of JavaScript, the standard definition of JavaScript or specification. It's part of Node. It's an extension of JavaScript. So let's drop this in the docs as well. Oop. No, I'm lost. FS. And I want to write, not a write stream. Something I should have prepared more for. Here we go. Let's just go click this, see what happens. Whoa, too many options. So square brackets means optional, so I'm just going to go ahead and ignore those. I might also be cheeky and skim for an example. Here's an example. This is way easier to read than all that documentation to start off with. Write file. That looks like the name of a file. This looks like some content. Great, let's just try copying this. Yep, we can always come back and read for more details if it doesn't do what we want it to do. And let's try changing this to our results. Cool, so ls. Okay, well that seems to work. Cool. So the point of this is not to discuss FS so much as to show that we can require in someone else's code that we didn't write that performs some function. Let us continue with that theme. Yeah, I'm going to pause and talk about how to install Node. I think I did open this link ahead of time. The best way to install Node is using NVM, in my opinion. I've just never had any trouble with it. If you find yourself running any commands with sudo and node and npm, like that's a bad sign. You're probably going to have trouble at some point. So there's a script which you just run here. And the only thing that you need to look for is just read in here about make sure that it's installed .nvm. Make sure it's installed the script in one of these of your files. So these are some of your terminal configuration things. So it depends on whether you're running Linux or Mac or whether you're running Zish or not. If you have any trouble, please let me know. So NVM is really beautiful for installing Node and managing what version you're using. But we wanted to install another package. So I actually want to do some other things with my numbers. Haven't quite decided yet, but there's this really cool module called a collection of functions called Lodash. It's a module library. I don't know what you'd call it, but for example, I was using merge the other day. Merge is great for merging objects. It's like assign except that it recursively merges. Wow, the text here is pretty small and pale. So let's, I want to use this. I want to use Lodash's merge. So how do I do that? I'll just run you through it and then talk a bit about how I knew what to do. So I want to use Lodash. This isn't going to quite work to start with. I'm going to copy their example just to see that it works. And it saved me coming up with. So you notice me deleting semicolons. Node doesn't need semicolons. only a couple of very rare cases where you shouldn't remove them, but in general, just forget about using semicolons and enjoy your life more. So let's run it and watch it not work. Great. Okay, so this is where installing packages comes in. So npm is what is by default used for managing packages. This is another thing that is bundled with Node. So you go npm install, or you can actually just get away with I as well. I for install Lodash. Let's see what happens. Cool. It said no such file package.json. That's fine, we're going to come back to that. Blah, blah, blah. Lodash plus something. So if we have a look at what's happened in our files, there's this new folder called node modules. So this is where it's installed the node module. I'm just going to run the code and then we're going to look at that in a little bit. Wow. Losash, that's pretty good, eh? Like a cummerbund. Great, cool, it worked. So why do we use Lodash? Why do I use Lodash a bit? In short, because JavaScript, unlike some languages like Ruby, doesn't have very many beautiful or nice functions for common manipulations. Things like checking whether something is an object can be really annoying. Not annoying, just like takes more typing than it should. So there are a bunch of convenience functions you can find over there, as well as a bunch of much more powerful merging functions. You can supply functions which with your merge to tune the merge as it's happening and stuff. It's pretty rad. Okay, so let's go look at what's in that node modules. Caching it. Lots of stuff. So this looks like more of a mess than I was hoping. Maybe we'll come over here and see if we can use tree. The tree shows us that there's all of these scripts now in there. I think I always forget my tree commands. I want to check out the depth. Yeah, I thought that was right. I just want to go one level deep. I think then I should just be using ls. Yeah. So yeah, I should have just used ls. We can see Lodash is in there. So we can install some other modules. Let's just install another one to see how it changes that situation over there. Oh, okay, so why? So now you can pause and ask like, well, I just installed, well, here's tape, but what's all this other crap? I didn't ask for this. Well, it's installed all these other things because tape has many other dependencies. For example, tape has a dependency which is once, Rappy, through all of these other ones. So Lodash was fairly well contained, just here. Didn't have any, as we saw before, it didn't have that many other dependencies. It had none other. But tape has many. So I'll pause and check out some questions and then continue on. Yep, Moid, if they both define as string, the solution is you assign them to a different variable. So it would be like say Lodash has an isString method in it. So you can do other things like this. And apparently, you know, let's say I've made a different module called Losash, or there's probably just a module called isString. If you did this, then obviously they would collide, but you can just name it something different. Oh, looks like Craig got there already. I'm a slow reader, so bear with me. No formal module syntax. Yeah. Yeah, I think there's a little bit more to modules, but I'm going to get to that. Yep, Rinchin, this is exactly why I'm telling you about MVM. Oh, yeah, I see you found it. That's great. I was working with someone the other day, and the main reason they had trouble was a distribution install, which was sudoed. Okay, so where was I in the flow of things? We've got a module. We've required some modules. Oh, let's use that other module. Just do I want to show you testing? Yeah, why not? The tape is a totally minimal module for testing. So let's go look at, this is npm, which has where you can look up your modules. Why is it not just, there we go, hopefully. So here's an example. You declare a name of your test, and then the second argument is a function. If you're new to JavaScript, you pass functions in quite a lot. These are like callbacks. They're like functions that get run when this test is being run. And it's handed T, and T is like a toolbox provided by tape. So you can call things like equal, as in like these two things should be equal. So, and there's a bunch of different methods. So the main thing you need to know is that equal is really good, and it's not the same as checking deeply inside an object. You need to use deep equal. So we'll just do a really quick deep equal example. And I'm going to use this again, saves me some typing. I'm kind of regretting doing this all in this file. I should split off in file 3, but and it's not. We have to use deep equal so that it checks every level of that object. And I often forget the order that, so it's actual and then expected. And then you need to, like, one of the peculiarities in this space is you have to call t.end. This this tells the test suite that you're finished running your tests. The reason there's a t.end that is required is that it Node has a lot of asynchronous code, as in writing to a file could take, or how long should it take? How long should I wait until that file's been written? Or how long should I wait until I've checked a server? So you can pass t around and then call t.end when you think the thing should be finished. Results. I took the results out. Cool. So let's watch it. If we were doing this PDD styles, we would watch it fail to start with, I guess. So this is pretty, so you can see tape is totally bare bones. It's actually kind of a little bit, because there's no coloring, I find it quite hard to read. It's checking, here's what it was expected to get, here's what it actually got. I'll show you how to make it. Hold on a second. Sorry. I broken Vim slightly, which is pretty strange. I've never seen that. Woo! I wanted to wind some of these back so that people reading this document didn't have to look at all of the new things all at once. So just going to rename this test with .test.js on the end to make it a little bit easier to do some stuff. I can't make this more readable without introducing another concept, so we'll do that other concept first. So you know that, well, I'm using version control, so I've got, do I have a Git remote set up for this yet? Yeah, I do. I've got a Git remote set up. I don't think I've got, oh yep, I've just got those starting notes in there. But if I want to go to commit this, I need to be really careful because there's this node modules folder. I don't really want to commit a copy of all of Lodash and all of that other stuff that tape pulled in. It's not, there's a copy of that somewhere else. I should just push the bare minimum. So actually I'm going to ignore the node modules folder, add that to my .gitignore. And you'll see that it's now not included. So cool. But now the problem is, like, if I send this to you, or if I put this up on GitHub and you want to pull it down and you want to run the code, do you have to go through every file and see what I required and then pull it in? Well, you could, but there's an easier way. So npm allows you a way to track this. So if you go npm init, it will ask you a series of questions. Like, what's the name of this package? Is it called intro? No, it's called node intro. And you can answer a bunch of questions. Yes. So I've got a alias for git status, which is just GS. So let's have a look at what's in this package.json. It's got a version, so this is going to be really important for if I want to publish this, so people can track what version they're using if it's a library like Lodash. It's got dependencies. Wow, that's strange. It's pretty smart to have picked those up. That must be a new feature. No idea how it got those. And some scripts. We'll come back to that, and where the repo is based. So we're actually going to use this. So yeah, when you pull this repository down, if you run just npm install, what happens is it'll go and look at this package.json, read all the dependencies, and install the ones that are listed there. And it makes cloning down a project and getting it going really easy. In Ruby, it's like your gem file, I guess. I'm sure Python has equivalents. So I wanted to use the script area. So the way that you use these scripts is you can type npm run and then the name of any script test, and it will run whatever's under test. So actually what I want to do, just do a simple example. I want to go node to, what was it called? No, 3. I can get it to run that if I want. So I can go npm run test. Ooh, new. Cannot find module 3 testing with tape. Oh. I put a .test.js on the end. Yeah, so it looks like that, so I don't need to necessarily run a particularly long, remember the name of the file or whatever it is that I want to run. I can just put it in a script. I'm going to make another script called test, but make it pretty. And I'm going to pipe those results as in send them through another module, which is going to hopefully make this pretty. So I'm going to install app spec, and that flag on the end, save dev, says please just this. People don't generally need that as a dependency for running this code. That's just for when they're running the tests. So if we have a look here, then under our dev dependencies, we've got tap spec. So relay tape should be under there as well. Okay, so now let's run npm run test pretty. Hooray, cool. Now we've got ticks, which is really affirming, and greenness, which is also good. It'll go red, and you'll get crosses. Let's break it and watch how much easier it is to read, hopefully. Yep, and I think you'll find on Tape's page, they have a bunch of modules which you can try out. There's some joke ones like Tap Nyan for a Nyan Cat flavored thing. I think looks like this has grown even since I was last year. I think Tap Diff might have been kind of nice. Anyway, you can get caught up in that. And I guess the final thing I would notice is that I think you can do stuff like this. As in tape, could you just take over running everything that starts with anything and just ends with .ts.js? Yay. Alright, I'm going to pause and check in on some questions. Yeah, I think TAP is a widely used specification, and that's why it's so simple and crude in its output, is that it can be passed by many different things. Yep, that's a good question, Moid. I'm going to come to that. Ouch, Craig, ouch. Yeah, front-end testing-y stuff, yeah. Pull requests welcome, Craig, pull requests welcome. So, Moid, I haven't forgotten what your question was about hacking a module. I will show you how to do that a little bit later, so please keep asking. There's an appropriate place in the ARC. So I want to look at my notes and remember what it was that I said we were going to do. So we've covered require an export, REPL, that. Oh yeah, so we've covered installing Node modules and what the package JSON is. The main things in the package JSON are the dependencies, the scripts, and the version, and I guess the name. Publishing modules, I'll get to that in a moment. It's pretty easy. How do I know? So say I don't know about Lodash, and I did want to merge some objects. You can go into a search like this. How do I know which of these are good? Well, let's look at a couple of them and I'll tell you what I look at. So already we've got some different version numbers. Not always, but a higher version number means it might have had a few different more iterations, and that can be good. If something's simple enough, the first version might just be perfect. So glancing at the documentation, is there an example? Is there other methods listed? If it doesn't have those, it's going to be harder to use. Some really simple stuff just doesn't have documentation, which is annoying. You can go look at stats. This is getting a lot of installs. So again, not a perfect thing. Just because something has 20 installs in a day doesn't mean it's not perfect for what you're doing. It's got 4 releases. It's got a few collaborators. That's pretty good. So, but does it do what you want it to do? Seems to. Why? Let's go have a look at a couple of others. Merge. Also got high use. Oh, it's got some browser usage. Interesting. Extend. Yep. So probably now I'd be drilling into the details. Why is this more performant, or what's the dish? So something like this. It looks like there are many ways to skin this cat. Yep. So that's kind of how I'd find reputable things. Let's get on to publishing a module. So the other day I was doing a BloomDB tutorial, and I was trying to make a plugin for the Scuttlebutt server, And I've got to a point where I've actually got some code which I think would be a good module. So, what a different screen. Here we go. I'm going to call it SSB server actual friends. So this is for calculating not who's following who, but like how are people interacting with each other. I'd call myself someone's friend if I've private messaged with them a lot, and I like a lot of their content, and we're in many of the same conversations. So I'm gonna get init npm. I've got a helper called hub, which will create a repo called the same thing on GitHub for me. I'm also going to create a git SSB repo because I want to put my code in multiple places. So I'm going to call the remote SSB, and the name of the repo is SSB server actual friends. So now I've got two different places I can push to. I'm going to npm init. I'm going to be lazy. You can use a -y flag, and it says yes to all the questions. And I probably want to go and review that. Paste my code in. This is where I need to save some things into the package JSON. So I need to install BlimView reduce full stream I don't know what to do about this versioning situation. You don't need to pay attention to that. Let's have a look at what's in the package JSON right now, check that everything's there. So it's got the dependencies it needs. So we need to remember that when someone installs this, do they have everything they need? Have I mentioned everything that they need? I guess I'll add a couple of keywords to make this easier to search on. Get up here. Let's check the Git status. Good thing I shouldn't commit everything because I've forgotten to exclude the node modules. Cool, so we've got nothing committed yet. Git commit -m initial commit. Cool. Okay, so I'll change that for a moment to show you something. So when you release a module on npm, you need to apply a git tag to it. So you can learn about git tag. I always have to go and read the manual, but there's a really nice, easy way to do this with npm. You can just go npm version, as in I'd like to name this particular, like where we're up to right now, as a version. And you can say major, minor, patch. I didn't know about these other ones. Cool. So I'm going to call this a major version, and what that's going to do is bump this major number here. So this is Semver versioning. Go read about it if you aren't familiar with it. And you'll see that it's declared things as version 1. So what it's done is made a commit message which changes things to version 1. Over here it bumped that number up there automatically. And let's see what it did copying this here in that commit. Just to check. Oh, it just reformatted that keywords part and changed that. This is, I think it's, no. We can list the tags that exist in Git now. And now I want to push this up to GitHub. And if you add a tags command, then it will send the tag as well. And I'll show you what that looks like. So this is the, we're on the master branch, but you can now look at, oh, I'm looking at the wrong thing totally. We are not publishing the node intro. We are publishing, come on, help me out, GitHub. Yeah. So in this way, people can jump to a particular version. And where was I? 6. Yeah. And I'm going to publish the same thing on your Scuttlebutt, so my peer-to-peer off-grid friends can enjoy it as well. And the final step is, so now that it's had a version change, you just go npm publish. How ridiculous is that? And if there's no server collisions, then there it is. I wonder if there's an open command or something. npm view, I wonder what that does. Okay, not what I was thinking. But if we go now and look on npm, it'll just be at that npm ssb server actual friends. Yay, and if I had a readme it would show up here. So no installs, there's the version, there's my face. I'm going to pause and check for questions. Looks like Craig's having a dig at packages. I would argue that, like, if I'm going to do a counter dig at Ruby gems, the naming makes no sense in Ruby. Capybara, a rodent. How does that help me with my code? At least most things are called what they do in the Node ecosystem, which helps. There are a lot of micro modules though. That's all right. Friendly jibes are welcome. I know Craig. I've known Craig for a few years. So, and Australasian culture is support your friends by having a go at them. Um, okay, so that's publishing a module. Let's check in on the document. So publishing a module, we've written a brief tape demo. I think now I can show you how you would plug something in and have a play. So over here in my code, while I was trying to figure out if this server code, if this plugin code was gonna work, I just had it in a file right here. Now I want to move it out into its own module. So let's say I move it. Oh damn. I did not want to do that. I wanted to copy, not move. So instead of having this file here, I'm going to delete that. And in the file where I was using it, where was I using that? Oh no, it was in the server, because we're plugging it in as a plugin to the server. So instead of saying, could you just get this from right here, I'm going to now say, could you get that from npm? So now that it's actually up on npm, I could just go npm install that module name, but say I'm still sort of messing around with things, or actually there is a version up there, but I don't want to use that version. I want to like tune things. Well, tune things with like locally and just check that they work before publishing another version. Well, we can do that. So npm like uses this name here in the package JSON as the canonical sort of way to address this package, and you can do this trick with, it basically uses symlinks under the hood, I think, but it's called npm link, and in the module that you want to make available for linking, you just type npm link, and what you'll see it said is whenever anyone asks for this now, I'm going to point them to your project's version, the one that I've been developing on here. So the other part of the link command is npm link, and then tell it what module you would like to try linking in. So SSB server actual friends. I'll run that again so it's a little bit easier to read. Oh, it's not easy to read. So it's saying, okay, I'm making a linkage in the node modules of this SSB server plugin. So this is in my learning folder. I'm linking that not to, like, there's not an actual thing, there's a symlink which points to the general node version. And we know that that actually points on to the one that's being developed. It's a bit of a roundabout way of saying things, sorry. So in short, I can now come in here, make some changes, come back over here, run this code, and it will, and those changes will be, it'll just treat it like the node modules in there. Hopefully that answers your question, I think it was it? No, it was Moid. Yeah, so Lance, when you do a npm version major, it will always bump the major version. The major version is the first one, and that means I'm introducing breaking massive changes. No. So you don't actually have to publish something to GitHub. You don't have to push something to GitHub to publish it on NPM. So that's a great thing to point out. It's like poor practice would be I'm just going to publish it on NPM and then don't publish the source code on, like push the source code to GitHub or wherever you want to push it. That means you've got a module which people can look at the source code of, but they can't really usefully provide pull requests to or easily browse on their favorite Git browsing service. So that was why I ran us through the practice of always push with the tags to GitHub and SSB, whatever, first, and then publish. And it means that's just like a mantra that I sort of follow, because it's like a washing your hands before you cook sort of thing. It'll save you from getting food poisoning. Okay, cool. So we're just going a little bit over an hour. Let's check in on some of the questions or the other requests. Oh, hi Melody. I'm glad you could join us. How does this look in Patchwork? I think we've done how does name clashes resolve. I love checkboxes, so if you want to help me out and add checkboxes to these, it'd be cool. Then we can see which ones we've done. Linting, yeah, I can do that in a brief way. So, I think there's a bit of a lag, so asking you to do things is quicker to just do it as well. Oh, some good questions. So linting, yep, let's add some linting. So, I think my favorite linter would just be called standard. It's written by Feross. The jam with standard is, look, we could mess around with and have arguments on our team about like what the style is going to be, or we could just agree to use standard, which has all of the opinions. And yeah. So we're going to add another script to here. I kind of like my scripts to be further up here actually, because they're the thing that I want to read earlier generally. Okay, so let's run it full screen so you can read it a little bit more easily. Trailing spaces not allowed. More than one blank line not allowed. Space is required after a comma. What a mess. So let's go look at that in basic script. Yeah, look at this. Pointing to that, I think. The ones I most care about are like, are you using modules that you're not, are you requiring modules or declaring variables that you're not using, because those can make your thing a mess. So you'll notice that it says you can run standard fix to automatically fix some of these problems. You can also install, because I use standard so much, I install it globally. So standard is a command line tool, and when I put a -G flag, it means I've got access to that script in every folder. So I never need to run this like I've already run that in the past, so I actually didn't need to install standard. And then I can just run standard like this. I think in a code project, like it's putting it in your package JSON's good though. But now like the best thing about this is I can just go like, standard, could you just tidy up all of those spaces and crap? I should have done a commit and then we could have actually seen what it did. Maybe we can see it here. Boom. So it spaced things out a little bit more consistently. And then let's just run standard. So it won't fix everything. There are some things that it won't touch because it doesn't know how to resolve them, but turns out there was nothing like really fatal in my code, fatally hideous in my code. If you want, you can go down the ESLint path. That's the other one that gets commonly used in JavaScript. Full of customization. You can turn different features on and off. You can make them breaking, like massive warnings, or you can make them like gentle suggestion type warnings, and you can tune it. Takes too much time for me. I think it might be useful on really big projects. Ha ha ha. Yeah, Lance, you need to learn how to time travel in Git. So probably some Git reset head. I would recommend that you Google it, and if you're like super worried, like take a copy of your repo and just run Git commands on it. Copy the folder and then like have a mess around. Linting. Yes, I'm not going to talk about ESLint. Too much config for my liking. Hacking dependencies locally, yeah. Listing packages is npm-ls. I tend to pipe it into something else, like less is a nice way to browse around. Yep. Yeah. Just gonna shut a door, hold on. Can't have babies screaming on the stream. Upgrading, downgrading. I don't know if I have a great answer for that. Learn about Semver. Learn about what this character here means. Learn about how Semver treats things with a zero, start with a 0 differently than it does when they start with a 1. There's some arguments that you should always start releasing at version 1 to avoid that, because there's basically this hole that people can fall in where, like, when they try and upgrade, if the thing starts with a 0, then the package manager's like, yeah, I don't care, whatevs, and doesn't update. So probably just start at 1. I'm using i3 gaps. What a hipster. Yes. Big fan of tiling window managers because I love keyboard shortcuts. Back onto the topic. Trusted modules. Read other people's code. Check npm, see how its usage is tracking, whether it was updated recently. ES6, yeah, it really depends on the developer. There are some staunch ES5 developers who are like, I don't need any of that newfangled junk, get it out of my code. There are some developers who they want some of the features of ES6, but they don't want classes, for example. So you'll see them using exclusively functional code. So the reason you need one of the complex, so ES6, if you're not familiar, is short for ECMAScript 6, and it's also called, I think the new standard is calling it with the name of the year that the standard was declared, so ES 2015, and this is the most recent release of the JavaScript, what is JavaScript specification. The problem with ES6 is that it's not supported fully in all of the browsers. It's like 90% supported. So you need to use other tools like Babel and Browserify to turn the code from ES6 into a version that all browsers can read. But I'm not going to get into that because that's like a whole half-hour talk in itself easily. If you have any questions on that, please ask at a later date. Yeah, let's look at I think we'd like to finish by looking at a bigger project like Patchwork and seeing, just doing a review of kind of some of the concepts we covered. So let's look at, I'm going to look at PatchBay actually. It's very similar to Patchwork. So let's have a look at it. What do we know about it? Well, the first place I would look when I open a new project is the package. You maybe look at the README, but the package JSON is on the code side, the interesting part. So, we've got a linter in here. What do you know? It's standard. We've got a start script. Okay, it runs Electron, and it takes the index.js file and runs it. So this kind of tells you the entry points of many. Also main is like a shortcut for like what's the entry point of this module when you require it, for example. So let's look at index. Okay, so yeah, well, like it's requiring in these other modules. How do we know that they're external modules? Well, they don't have a ./ in front of them. So this is requiring in some Electron stuff. Looks like it's setting up some menu things. And there's this thing called a background process. And Electron is spinning up, it's going and getting this background process JS file. So dirname is a variable which is accessible in Node, and it's like what's the current directory that you're in. So path.join joins the current working directory with background process, which allows it to go and read this file. So this is it starting a Scuttlebot in the background. And this is where I would install my module. Require SSB server, what was it called? Actual friends. User. So I could declare a variable for this as like, if I wanted, like I could go var mix plugin like that and then go use that, but it's not that common to see require used inline like this, apart from files like this, which is where that's all they're doing. This thing with require, where it's got a / after it, this means actually rather than just getting the main file from that module, could you just actually go dig into the plugins folder in the Scuttlebot module, look inside the master, and this will be short for master.js. It'll be either short for master.js or master/index.js. The require has some smartness about like what it knows how to go and grab. I'm trying to look for a file which so I guess one of the styles so the problem with trying to use PatchBay as an example of a module is that we don't do much relative requiring because we're using this thing called depject, which is kind of like a way to sidestep requiring it. It puts the code that you're writing into a shared space that anyone can overwrite and grab from, like yeah. It's a kind of conversation in itself. So apologies, that's not a very good example. I think I made a junk folder for this code that I wanted to extract into a module because it's used in a couple of places. So maybe I could search for that and show you a require, but I'll do that. App page search. Here it is. So here's a relative require. This is getting us that local file. Notice again it doesn't have that JS on the end. Dot means go up a folder. Do we have anything else? So there's a second part of this question. Yes, there can be separate client and server processes. So that was what that background process was. And Electron gives you a way to start up a process in the back. And in our case, both of them with PatchBay, both of them are running Node, and Electron is smart enough that it runs a version of Node that knows all of ES6, so you don't need to worry about any of that like browser compatibility stuff. I don't know if it's possible to run background processes with other languages. Maybe somebody can answer that. Yeah. I think, so answering Craig's question about Yarn versus NPM, to be honest, I haven't looked that closely. I know a bunch of people are... Basically, NPM has a huge amount of momentum. Most of the packages are there. I think Yarn's sort of cross-compatible. It'll get things from the registry on NPM. Not sure. I also know that there's a project which is Scuttlebutt based, which is... Let's see if it's in the organization that Cell has been working on, which is an NPM registry. No. And this one works offline. So the gotcha being that I think he's developing it on, he's not publishing it on GitHub. He's publishing it on GitSSB, which is a Git implementation on Scuttlebutt. So a little bit of a bootstrapping problem maybe there, or maybe it's just early beta. But I think he's been using that extensively as a replacement for NPM. Okay. Does anyone have any final questions before we wrap up? So, reminder that I'm going to be collecting resources on this guide repo. I'll post a link to that, and so the guide repo is basically going to be a map of other repos like an intro to Node, an intro to Flume, an intro to SSB client. So hopefully it makes it a little bit easier for you all to navigate. Woo! Yeah, shoot, Lance. Ask about standard, presumably. Yeah, no worries. Let's have a look at it in the repo. So you don't even need to put it in the package JSON. Like you can run it just as a command line script if you've installed standard globally. But this is not the package JSON I was looking for. I've gone and got lost. Here we go. So you can call it whatever you want, lint thing or whatever. This is mainly just a convenience and just to really hammer home the idea of how you can use these. Like you could say cool. So because standard passed, it didn't say anything, but you can get it to print little things out. Notice it tells you what command it's running when you run a script. Moid, one general question. I think when Dominic started building it, JavaScript was his main language. I think it has a bunch of affordances. Node is pretty quick to develop in. It's just-in-time compiled, which means you've got quite quick sort of turnaround. There's a vibrant ecosystem of modules. What other reasons? I think it's got fairly good support compared to some languages for asynchronous. It's got really great support for stream and sort of asynchronous calls. Yep, I think that's about it. Yeah, agree. Vague. I mean, Node has its challenges as well, like JavaScript garbage collection is a perpetual problem, but you kind of just you hit that later on maybe. I don't know too much about optimizing garbage collection. You can kind of get away with without knowing too much of that for quite a while, and it means you can do a lot of exploration before needing to learn about optimization. Okay, well, I'm going to wrap up recording. Hopefully I was recording. Yay.